Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams, with your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me. Today, we're talking with Alexis Avila.
Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I basically have always really been interested in education, working with kids in a one-on-one capacity, because I feel like that's kind of like my learning style. That I've always benefited from small class sizes where I could ask a lot of questions and get my questions answered. So I really pursued education. In Michigan, I was pre-med, but then I shifted to psychology and film. I had a lot of interest in film and theater. Yeah, I just had a lot of interest, period. So after college, I went and got my master's as a guidance counselor, became certified guidance in the state of Wisconsin and Massachusetts. My main mission was I really wanted to work with kids one-on-one and help them with self-esteem and help them, maybe with college admissions. But after doing a year residency in Wisconsin, my passion really wasn't there because I felt like it was an underpaying job that required many hours of your time, and guidance counselor was wearing too many hats. Wasn't doing enough of the counseling piece, but was doing more of like the bureaucracy kind of like scheduling piece. And I just really wasn't into fixing kids' schedules. So then I fell into tutoring, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow, so you kind of made a transition from working as a guidance counselor to doing tutoring more privately. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I got in. My little brother had a private tutor back in Massachusetts, and the tutor's line was out the door. He had a very busy practice, and he hired me on as an associate. And quickly, I learned that you can make as much money or more as a private tutor, and schedule your own hours and pursue all your other passions. So I just thought it was just a great fit for me to become a private tutor. And that was back in 2002.
Oh, wow. 2002. So it's been a while. What would you say was the pivotal moment when you realized that working as a guidance counselor wasn't for you, but test prep was something that you thought you could really be passionate about?
When my supervisor at the high school was telling me to go out into the hallway and tell kids to take their headphones off. And I was like, is this guidance counseling? So I think that was the moment that I was like, I don't really think this is a job for me that I'd be happy doing. And then in terms of the test prep, well, the test prep market has boomed for quite some time. There's just a lot of business. A lot of families want to, give their students a competitive advantage, to maximize their testing scores. And I'm very good at teaching the tests, and, having had a pre-med background, I was able to do a lot of different kinds of subjects, the maths, the sciences, but as well as the humanities. And I just felt like it was like a lot of fun to teach the SAT, and I'm really good at helping students see the big picture and ease their anxiety. And that's where my counseling background comes into play. So I just felt like, I was able to, tutoring works. It helped if you get a private tutor who knows his stuff and instills confidence in you, you're going to maximize your SAT score. So that's what I like about the whole test prep angle. And then I do a lot of tutoring as well. And that's academic subject tutoring. And it's just more of the same. It's instilling confidence. It's teaching the content, in a one-on-one capacity, which I feel like is the most conducive to learning, when you get your questions answered right away.
Sure. The aspect of confidence building and motivation is so important. Could you tell us a little bit about, a student, you took particular steps to lead them to build that confidence? What's your process typically like?
Well, it all starts with listening to the parents before we even have a session, because the parents are usually struggling at home with the student, getting the student to buckle down on his studies. And it's really important to have a lending ear and listen and give the parents confidence that you're going to be a coach for that student each step of the way. So I take meticulous notes on the phone or in person before I even meet the student, so that when I see the student at session one, I know the student pretty well. Then what I do, and I train all my tutors to do this, is we interview, like an informal interview at the beginning of the session to build rapport. So we interview the student for about 15 to 30 minutes before we even dive into the test content, just to set the expectations. It's really important to hold kids accountable. They have to do their homework. There's going to be test prep homework. And we got to let students know that if they drop the ball on the homework and don't do don't put in, 30 minutes a day, they're not going to maximize their test scores. And on the flip side, we always let students know that if they do their homework and they pay attention, they come to class on time and they show a good attitude, those students traditionally do the best on their test. So, we're not trying to be like hard asses, but we just try to really like set like the ground rules. And then we also get to know the student a little bit, just what passions and hobbies does the student have, and then what we try to do is just build, we take those notes from the student and the parent, and then we try to build a custom individualized game plan that will best instill confidence and help maximize the student's scores. So like an example of maybe taking a student through that process. Well, I mean, each student is so different, but I remember tutoring this kid and he was trying to get a lacrosse scholarship into one of the Ivy League schools. So he needed a certain SAT score to get into an Ivy League school. And he came to us with very low SAT scores. But, with rigorous coaching once a week and, about 3 to 4 hours of homework in between sessions. The student did all his homework. He came to sessions on time, asked great questions. He was able to improve his score 480 points.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. And get into the Ivy League schools. So yeah, I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, and I'm not one of those people to say, we have like a certain average, SAT improvement. It's really hard to, keep track of that kind of metric, but I wanted to let you know that because, a student who does his homework, a student who comes to class and has a good attitude eventually will maximize his SAT score. So that's like kind of an example.
Totally. That's great. And I think a lot of our listeners out there can relate to a student like that. You're in terms of the obstacles, at least, like you've got extracurriculars, you're on the lacrosse team or have some other really time consuming, pursuit outside of your test prep for the SAT, ACT, whatever. What do you find to be, for this particular lacrosse student, for example, what was different about him? Did he have some sort of unique attribute or unique habit that enabled him to find the time for it all and balance the test prep and responsibilities with everything else he had going on?
I think he was an elite athlete, and he was a sharp kid. It's not a typical example, but I think that on game day he didn't buckle down to pressure. So I don't think this student had a lot of test anxiety, and he was cool under pressure. And when he took that test, he was able to really ace it. I think that's kind of the example with this kid. And now he was also very, very busy, as you were saying. So what we had to do is really work with his schedule. I think he could only meet like on a Tuesday night from 8 to 10, for example, or it was a no-go. Do you see what I'm saying? So a lot of what we do really is not, rocket science, but it's just kind of like really working with the student's busy schedule. And then also he was able to juggle all his, extracurriculars, his hockey. I think he was like a duo athlete. So he did hockey and lacrosse. A lot of kids are really overwhelmed today, with their extracurriculars, and you just have to kind of like do two things. You have to work with their schedule the best they can. You can't be like a hard ass tutor and say, well, we're just going to meet on Saturdays or, no, I mean, for 15 years, I've been working with the students' schedules as best as we can. We work every day. We work morning and night. If the kid goes to private school, we work during their study periods. If we have to go to the school, we will do that. Do you see what I'm saying? If like the student is in a New Jersey prep school and has like only Wednesday night available, we work with them online. We're in Boston. We can't go to New Jersey. So, and then the second thing, I think I forgot the second thing, but, you just have to work with their schedule the best they can. And then you have to also, make sure you set the expectations for the kid as well and say like, look, it's going to be, you got to take the SAT as seriously as your sports. You got to take the SAT as seriously as your college prep work. You got to take the SAT as seriously as another math class. In fact, I tell kids they have to treat the SAT and ACT prep as another course. And usually how they answer that question, Stephen, is will tell me if they're going to have a good attitude going forward. And a good attitude, remember, is part of what allows them to maximize their SAT score.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Attitude and commitment. And I've also told students, treat the SAT, ACT like it's a part-time job, or like it's another college class at least, high school class at least. I mean, considering the weight that it's given in the admission process, you can't just treat it as like, look at it for, an hour here, an hour there. You really got to block aside time in the schedule. And if your only time available is 8 to 10 p.m. on a Friday night, and you got to ask yourself, how badly do you want this? So I think that you touched on something really, really important there.
Yeah, definitely. I love the part-time job thing. I mean, it's pretty critical stuff, so.
One thing you mentioned in passing that I'd love to delve a little bit deeper into is test anxiety. I know you said the lacrosse kid didn't have test anxiety, but I know that so many students out there do. And I'm wondering, if you could, maybe walk us through a student, you worked with who you helped to overcome that anxiety. What was the process?
The process has to be a very deliberate process. Hopefully the parent will basically, elucidate the fact that the student has test anxiety, and they usually will. They'll say, look, Johnny has test anxiety. Just keep in mind, so what you need to do is really strategically put into place, ways in which to instill that confidence. So what we do is really try to help the student understand that organization and preparation with months and months in advance will best put your foot forward. Like for example, we taught, we had a kid, we have so many kids, but we have a kid with test anxiety. One thing that we teach the student is to master the test format, to know that, like, say, the essay is section 1, and the last section of the SAT is the 10-minute grammar section. And then after that, there's more predictability as well. So we try to teach how many questions are in each section and how to pace yourself on for each section. Because, if you teach students what to expect on the SAT, he's going to be that much more confident going into the test. It's not going to be like some novel, 4-hour exam. It's going to be something like, oh, I've done this many, many times, and I feel that much better. So another thing that we do with students with test anxiety is, we highly recommend that the student gets into the habit of waking up early on Saturday mornings about 8 weeks leading up to the exam. Why? Because on Saturday morning, on SAT day, if you're a late sleeper on Saturdays traditionally, and then you have to wake up like at 7 a.m. on a Saturday and go to a cold room with a bunch of students, your test anxiety is going to manifest. It's going to, it's going to be a problem. So what we try to do is reverse engineer how to, help the student overcome this test anxiety. And one way is to prepare them to wake up early and get them acclimated to taking SAT practice tests on Saturday mornings. So not only do we tell students that to wake up at 8 a.m, about 8 weeks leading up to the test, but also to have a nice healthy breakfast, with protein and fruits and vegetables, and to do portions or hopefully a full practice exam on a Saturday morning. We want them to do SAT problems so that when they go in on test day, they're at their most confident. I'm not saying they're going to completely get rid of their test anxiety. It's not a perfect world, but I'm sure it's going to give them a little bit more confidence than if they were just to go back to their old habits and go to like a midnight movie on a Friday night with their buddies, and then they, go to sleep late, wake up late, and then they have to take an SAT at 8, 9 in the morning. Good luck to that,
No, absolutely. Going out the night before definitely isn't the way to go on this. But you just touched on so many valuable points here, Alexis. I couldn't agree more. I think we're really of like minds on this one. Test anxiety, stress. You got to take a multi-pronged approach. There's so many different things you can do to reduce that stress. Familiarity, planning ahead, really, really key. Not just kind of walking in there with no clue what to expect. If you've been planning ahead weeks and months in advance, then when game day comes, you're going to know what to expect because you've been through that process several times before. I also agree, take some practice tests on Saturday mornings in the weeks leading up to the test. That way, your actual test day is just another practice test. sleep, waking up early in general, there's this whole, concept of sleep inertia. Sleep inertia, the idea that, takes your brain a couple hours to wake up in the morning. And so if you're in the habit of waking up early and you wake up early on game day, then your mind's going to be sharp and you'll be ready to go. But you can't be waking up, 6 a.m. SAT day and waking up at 8 a.m. every other day in the week leading up to that. It's a gradual process. Finally, thing you touched on, eating healthy, super important. You got to give your brain that fuel in order to do well. You can't just eat like a bagel or, a soda, drink a soda or something. You got to have some protein in there too, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And also early, waking up early means you have to go to bed early. So, that's another thing that, us tutors try to, let the students know and try to teach them. And then, diet is so critical as well. I mean, it's also teaching students what not to eat. A lot of these kids are grabbing those 5-hour energy drinks, but what they don't realize is that the caffeine is dangerous because we're talking about kids needing their sleep. So it's really teaching them like some, key nutrition tips as well.
Yeah, totally. You can't be burning the candle at both ends. You walk in on, a couple hours of sleep. It's definitely not going to lead to the results that you want. The SAT is a tough exam. ACT is a tough exam. You want to do your best. And part of that is, proper preparation, which includes sleep. So, yeah. So absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing those tips, Alexis. I want to shift gears now a little bit. What we really love to hear on College Admissions Toolbox are stories. So could you take us to the moment in time of the worst college admissions moment that you've seen or experienced and tell us the story behind it?
Yeah. Now I'm not gonna name names, but my guidance counselor basically told me not to apply to Michigan.
Oh my God, that's where you ended up going.
That's where I ended up going. So, she looked at a blemish in my report card. I got a C- freshman year in math. Basically, it was just one of those things where I went from an A first term right to a C-. I bounced back eventually and got like a B for the course, but it was more of just like a person like me and the teacher just didn't get along, or maybe I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and that happens. But she just. And then to couple that with the fact that I didn't meet with my busy guidance counselor much, okay? Because remember, in these public high schools, and it's getting worse, these guidance counselors have about 400 kids to help with their college counseling needs. And I was kind of like, I wasn't the most outgoing person and like going to, actively seeking out my guidance counselor. I saw her like freshman year once, and then I didn't see her again junior year.
That is so common. The ratios are just totally out of whack.
Yeah, it's a problem, especially if you're trying to get into a top tier school. So of course, when I saw her, for my one time junior year visit, she just kind of looked at my report card and she's just like, well, you should just apply to UMass Amherst. Next. That's kind of the vibe I got. So that's probably the worst college admissions moment, because then I had to have my mom help me. She became my guidance counselor. Yeah. And she basically was like, look, you're applying to Michigan. And we, I worked on my application and, many hours. And then, and I got into Michigan, and then it made my guidance counselor look horrible. So that's probably the worst college admissions moment I've had. And here's a bit of irony for you. My guidance counselor is now a private guidance counselor.
No kidding, with the awful advice they're giving.
Yeah. That being told, make sure that you really interview if you're going to hire a private guidance counselor, private college counselor, make sure you interview that college counselor. That's my advice.
No, totally. And you don't want a guidance counselor, admission consultant who's going to lead you to sell yourself short. I mean, you're just, I don't have your whole high school transcript in front of me, but, just having, a blemish from freshman year, we're talking now fall of senior year. Everything else was on track, and you're also, you have that upward trend. I don't see what the big deal is. Everyone has a bad semester, a bad quarter, especially if it's freshman year. You're temporarily, hanging out with the wrong crowd. You had 3 years to mature.
Completely. You got to look at the whole picture.
Totally. But tell me about the moment that you heard this, from the guidance counselor. What was going through your mind?
I was disappointed because I saw straight A's junior year. I got straight A's junior year. So I was like, are we looking at the same report card here? I went from being a knucklehead freshman year to completely rebounding. And, sophomore year was a little better. And then junior year, I found a teacher who believed in me, and she gave me an A+ in a very hard English class. So the aha moment I had was, if you find a teacher who believes in you, gravitate towards her or him and work your butt off in that class. And, you're going to get rewarded with a good grade. And then things are really going to turn around for you. So I was just disappointed when the guidance counselor didn't look at my whole portfolio. And I realized I had to take matters in my own hands. Totally.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. I mean, definitely, obviously Michigan-Ann Arbor was a school you were capable of getting into. And it sounds like, the mentor, which is, again, so key, led you to ultimately, put in that application. I'm really glad that, it all worked out in the end, luckily. But yeah, there's so many students out there who don't have that experience, and you've got to seek out that mentor. You got to seek out the people who believe in you and will push you to reach for the stars. So I'm really happy to hear your story, and I hope that our listeners definitely take note of the valuable lessons that you've shared here. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
I want to move now into the lightning round, where I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
You give me some rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
Take care of your college essays during the summer. You're going to be busy, senior year with your applications. You don't want to have a bunch of college essays to, labor over. You have the summer off anyway. Do your college essays early.
Definitely. Planning ahead, so key. Get them out of the way. Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to college admission success?
Organization and, being genuine about where you want to go. So colleges will sense if you're genuine or not. So if you want to get into Cornell, visit Cornell, meet people in Cornell, convey your passion for getting into Cornell. So be genuine.
Definitely. What's one online college admissions resource that you absolutely love?
I like the Perfect Score project. This mom in New York took the SAT 8 times with her son and wrote a book about it. And her website's pretty impressive because she kind of through her trials and tribulations, she came up with a ton of links to where one click of the button you can access a bunch of SAT practice tests for free. You can find a bunch of blogs that have helpful SAT advice. So I just feel like the content on the Perfect Score Project site is fabulous.
She's got great stuff there, and she also has a really great story. Middle-aged woman going through the SAT prep process, decades later. Interesting stuff, funny stuff, useful stuff. Definitely check it out. We'll link to it in the show notes. What's one book that you believe no college applicant should be without?
I think they should grab the Fisk Guide to Colleges because it's not only going to show you the really good colleges that you might be interested in attending, but it also breaks down into nice paragraphs about the culture of each college. So if you don't have the chance to visit, you can get some really good detailed information about the colleges. And it's just kind of reader friendly and gives you the stats as well for schools. So Fisk Guide to Colleges. Yeah,
it's a great one. Really useful to have all that information organized in a printed bound form. And definitely well vetted and everything. So we'll definitely link to that as well. This was great, Alexis. Thanks so much for being on the show. What are you up to these days?
Well, I have a tutoring company, preppedandpolished.com. So we're really busy with that. We do in-person and online tutoring. And I'm really busy with my podcast. I put out 2 shows per week. On Tuesdays, we do a tutoring tips episode. And then on Thursdays, we interview fascinating guests and influencers in the world of education. So you can access all my podcast episodes if you go to preppedandpolished.com/podcast.
Absolutely. Great podcast. I love it. It's why I invited you on the show today, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Alexis. Any final thoughts before you go?
Just enjoy the weekend and, take care of your mind and body, and you'll do fine.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Alexis. Take care.
You too, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams. There are a million books out there about applying to college, but it's hard to know which ones are worth buying and which are just a waste of time. When I was applying to college, I felt like most of them weren't really saying anything that I didn't already know. And a lot of the others were just plain boring. So I've put together a list of the best books I've read on the admissions process. I've got books on there about college essays, scholarships, and test prep. So check it out. It's at collegeadmissionstoolbox.com/books.